Hello everyone, today we are going to be modeling a scary Terry face from Rick and Morty. So first off, you're going to start with some gum paste or fondant mixed with Tylose glue, and as you see I've got this nice purpley pink color that matches his skin. And I roll it into a teardrop and flatten it down, because that's basically the shape of his face. So now you're going to take a straight blade or razor and cut off the top of his head. This is so you can put the hat on. Here I am cutting out the shape of his mouth. I do this because I like to add in some red and inside the mouth, and then also add in his teeth. I think it gives him a little bit of depth, makes him look a lot cooler. So here I'm just rounding out the inside of his mouth with the ball tool. I do this just so that when I add my red inside the mouth, it doesn't look weird and bumpy. It looks cohesive and it looks like it's supposed to be there. So I use a ball tool, and I also use this Dresden tool. You don't have to make it as perfect as I am. Sometimes you just keep playing with it and you don't realize how long you're doing it for. So now I'm taking my sugar shaper and I'm just outlining some little lines around the face to give him a little more detail, make him look like he's more excited. And then I use my ball tool to figure out where my eyes will be and then make them bigger, because he's got some nice big eyes. So now we're going to make the chin piece. And for that, you roll two smaller pieces of the same skin color into teardrops, and then we'll just put them together. And you can pinch off the excess, roll it a little bit more until you get the shape that you like. Cut off the excess again, and then we're just going to use a little bit of Tylose glue to attach it to his face, just to make sure it doesn't come off. And then I use my Dresden tool and my little shaper to help me blend them in to make sure it looks like one piece. So I'll just redefine my lines a little bit with my shaper, give the chin piece some lines so it looks a little more defined. With this guy's face, you can never really have too many definition lines. He's a very wrinkly character. So for his nose, you're going to do the same thing you did as the chin piece. You're just going to roll a small teardrop shape and then put it right there on top of his face. And I will use one of my sugar shapers to blend it in and make sure it looks like one cohesive design. And I'm just making him look like he's a little bit more happy. He is a very happy character. Always smiling. It's an evil smile, but he's smiling. And then I'm using some pale yellow for his eyeballs. Basically, you just want to make sure they're the same size. And then of course you're going to use some Tylose glue to make sure that they stay in place. So now I'm using a dark red, almost burgundy color for the inside of his mouth. I'm using such a dark color because I want it to contrast with the rest of his character. His tongue is going to be bright red, so I really want it to stand out. So I just use a little bit of Tylose glue on the inside of his mouth to make sure that the piece sticks, and I make sure that it's generally the right shape. And then just go ahead and stick it inside his mouth. And use your Dresden tool to make sure that it's in all the little cracks and crevices. You want to make sure there's no air bubbles underneath that. And just smooth it out to the edges. Gives it a nice clean look. So I'm just using my sugar shaper to define a few more lines. As I said, he's really wrinkly, and usually while you're working, you may mess up some of the lines. So now we're going to start working on the hat. The hat is actually really simple. First we're going to roll out the brim. And for that we just use a circle cutter and cut off the excess. And of course we're going to use Tylose glue to attach the hat as well. So now we're going to make the top of the hat. His hat is basically just 2 points, so it's very easy to make. So now we're going to make the top of the hat, and for that you're just going to roll a tapered log in your hands. And as you can see, I just fold the 2 points together, making sure that one of them is taller than the other one. Now for this figurine, while I was making him, I made this top piece of the hat, and then I put it up to his head, and I felt that it wasn't big enough. So we're going to add a little bit more. His hat is basically half of his head when you look at his picture, so you really want to make sure that the proportions are correct. So here I'm just bunching up the fondant. I'm pushing it into itself to make sure that the base of the top of the hat is the correct thickness. And now we're just going to cut off the excess pieces of the hat with a straight blade. And of course, we're going to use some Tylose glue to secure it to the hat brim. So now we're going to do the tongue, and we'll put a little bit of Tylose glue on the side of the mouth, and then we'll just take a tiny bit of red fondant and roll it into a little tapered log, and then you're just going to flatten it out with your finger. His tongue is long and pointy. And then we're just going to use the X-acto knife to cut the tongue at a little bit of an angle, because then you don't have a little bit hanging off in one corner. And we're going to attach it where we put our little dab of Tylose glue, and then use our sugar shaper to make sure that it's securely in there, and then also to curl the tongue forward to give it a little bit more dimension. Here you can see I'm just using a Wilton food writer, and I am creating the irises of his eyes. You just need one long skinny line. I did wait for the eyes to dry a little bit before I decided to write on them. Right now I'm using white royal icing to create the teeth. There's no tip in the bag, it's just cut to a point. The teeth are not very fancy, they're just tapered to a point. Even if you can't get the correct point that you're looking for, you can always use a sugar shaper to pull out the point a little more after the royal icing has started to dry, which is what I do here. And you're just pulling the royal icing a little bit. Just pulling it out to a point. His character is very menacing, so you really want him to have those pointy teeth that he is so proud of. And last but not least, we're going to add all his little warts on. And depending on how sticky your fondant is, you can just stick it right onto his face. You may or may not need Tylose glue to make it stick. As you can see, I did not. It is actually kind of humid when I'm making this, so it's nice and sticky. There are no specific spots that you need to have his little warts, but I like to add them where I think they look good. And that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this Scary Terry tutorial. And if there's anything else that you guys want to see me do a tutorial of, please let me know. Thank you so much for watching.